Oh, yeah, that's right. We're having another one. What DJ Khaled say? Another one. Another trade video as the trade deadline is approaching. And my belief that the Detroit Lions are going to be buyers at the trade deadline. But we got a little bit more information, and I think this makes things maybe starts to narrow it down to what the Detroit Lions, a possible candidate that the Detroit Lions could bring in as far as a trade is concerned. But before we go any further, Dan Campbell had something to say about it. He was asked about it today in the press conference. Here's what he had to say regarding the trade deadline.
You still got 2 games left before the trade deadline, but I wonder, what are those conversations like that you have with Brad about what you may or may not think you guys need?
Yeah, look, that's Brad. We talked yesterday just briefly in passing. So, he's always looking. He's looking. He's seeing if something's out there, something that makes sense. But ultimately, man, I trust him. He's going to handle it, and if it's something that's serious, he'll bring it to me. Otherwise, I handle my business, getting this team ready to play the next week, and whatever does or does not happen, I trust Brad 100%. It's going to be for the better of us, betterment of our team.
Talk about a coach's answer. That was the perfect coach's answer. And I think there's 100% truth to that. And everything he said, that basically it's Brad's job to do that dirty work. And when it's time, he'll bring it to Dan. If it gets serious, he'll bring it to Dan. So we got 10 days until we find out. Don't forget that TJ Hockenson was traded the day of the trade deadline. I think it was a few hours before. It wasn't like at the wire. The Jamal Williams one was one that came at the wire. TJ Hockenson came in the morning. But I saw an article on ESPN Plus from Jeremy Fowler, a trusted source in the NFL community when it comes to source and news and things like that. And there's a couple of guys that we've been talking about that I think this could give us a better idea of how this is going to go. And I want to keep this video under 10 minutes, but it is quite a bit of information. The first thing I want to do is talk about Vikings edge rusher Danielle Hunter. Here's what he had to say regarding Danielle Hunter and the possibility of him getting traded. He says, "It's my understanding on Minnesota and Hunter, the Vikings gauged trade interest in the offseason when they didn't have a new deal as a contingency if they couldn't re-sign him. Lately, they have not been exploring a trade for Hunter, despite some external interest. And there's a sentiment in the building that Hunter, who leads the league in sacks, is valuable for a team that isn't out of it yet." So that's the first thing I want to say. So the sense is it would take a sizable deal to pry him. One league exec who's very high on Hunter said he's not in a position to give up a first rounder for him, suggesting that it might be what it would require. Now, I have some thoughts on that. And who am I, right? I'm just a dude sitting in his basement. But Danielle Hunter, if you wanted Danielle Hunter to the Detroit Lions, there is in the next coming weeks, the Minnesota Vikings have a possibility to be anywhere from 2-6 to 4-4. And if they're 4-4, they're very much in this thing, not necessarily for the division, but for a possible wild card spot. So if they're 2-6, then he could be gone, because at this point you're definitely going to shut down Justin Jefferson, and you're not going to have a reason to keep Danielle Hunter. He gets to walk after this season anyway. So I would say the best case scenario for Danielle Hunter to be available would be really 2-6. 2-6 would probably mean that Danielle Hunter would be available. I am not, however, giving up a first round pick for anyone on the trade market, because all of the guys that I'm looking at are guys who gets to walk after the season is over. So I'm going to say negative to that. Now, this other one is, I think, even more intriguing. And it varies, because one day you'll hear that Chase Young is the hot candidate to be traded. The next time you will hear that it is Danielle Hunter, the hot commodity to be traded. So I really don't know, but we're going to find out. I'll give you my thoughts when I look at their schedule, because I think this is going to be really good. Now, if we look at the schedule, let me pull it up for the Washington Commanders. Okay, check this out. Let's go back to Jeremy Fowler and Chase Young, because this is what he had to say when it comes to Chase Young. It says Young and Sweat, meaning Montez Sweat, whose contracts expire in March, are popular names this year. Here's what I've been told. Washington, as of now, very much sees both in the future. The Commanders' team strength is the defensive line. Deron Payne produced in his contract year to earn a 4-year, $90 million deal in March, and Sweat, 4.5 sacks, and Young, 3 sacks, are the next in line. As one source told me, betting odds on one or both being dealt should not be great, so my sense is they don't plan to trade them. However, one AFC exec believes Washington would at least listen to offers and potentially consider them, which the source didn't completely shoot down. Here's the key, which brings us to the state of Washington sitting at 3-3. The Giants and Eagles are on deck. Their next 2 games could determine a lot. The sense is, after talking to several people, is if one were to be dealt again, huge if, it's likely Young, in part because he's more inclined to play out the year and entertain free agency. Plus, he needs to play a healthy season. Now, basically what they're saying is, as far as the Washington Commanders are concerned, then Chase Young he's basically on a prove-it deal. And as far as Chase Young is concerned, he wants to explore the free agent market because, again, the Washington Commanders decided that they weren't going to pick up his 5th-year option, so he's going to have zero loyalty to them. Now, we're heading into the trade deadline in 2 weeks. The best case for the Washington Commanders is that they are 5-3, worst case 3-5, and if you meet in the middle, they're 4-4. They have the New York Giants on the road, and then the Philadelphia Eagles at home. They did play them tough the first go around in Philly. They took that game to overtime. But here's the case. And I want you to tell me in the comments below, which person do you think is more likely to be traded based off the 2 scenarios that I paint? All right. Here is the remaining schedule for the Washington Commanders. So keep in mind everything I said about what Jeremy Fowler had to say, and then you add a potential of this record, right? So let's say they split with they beat the New York Giants, but then they lose to the Philadelphia Eagles. They played the New England Patriots. Matter of fact, let me bring this in so you can take a look at it and won't be looking at my face. They played the New England Patriots, the Seattle Seahawks, the New York Giants, the Dallas Cowboys, the Miami Dolphins. This is the Washington Commanders, the LA Rams, the New York Jets, the San Francisco 49ers, the Dallas Cowboys, and that's how they end the season with the Dallas Cowboys. I see, in my opinion, a best case scenario for the Washington Commanders 2023 season to be, best case scenario would be 9-8. Actually, I see 7-10, and best case scenario would be 8-9. 8-9 is not going to get you in the playoffs. So now, how does this come back to the Detroit Lions? Based off what we heard from Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes, that they're always trying to make the team better. And Washington right now may or may not move on from either Chase Young or Montez Sweat. And if they decide to franchise tag one, they're probably going to choose Sweat over Young based on the production from Montez Sweat, which means that, to me, the most likely candidate to be traded to the Detroit Lions at the trade deadline is one Chase Young. Now, even though he wants to explore free agency, we could be a perfect fit for him. We can have a Buckeye and a Wolverine, 2 young guys under 25, 2 guys that would wreak havoc on the defensive line. So based off the potential of a missing the playoffs, Ron Rivera getting fired, and the needs of the Detroit Lions, I'm going to say that Chase Young is going to be the person we trade for. That's the most likely scenario, in my opinion, just simply based on what we need on the field, that Aiden Hutchinson needs some help, and the fact that Washington, Chase Young wants to explore free agency, which means he's not trying to stick around. So he's more likely, to me, to be traded. And the catalyst is going to be, if the Commanders, even if the Commanders are 5-3, I still think they end the season with a best case record of 9-8. And in the NFC this year, that's not going to get you into the playoffs. So what do you need to hold on to Chase Young for when you could, if you let him walk, you're going to get a best case scenario, a compensatory 3rd round pick. That's a best case scenario. So I just wanted to bring that up. That's the most likely scenario in my opinion. Let me know what you think below. Do you think we'll make a move at the trade deadline? And if so, who would you want? Now, briefly, Brian Burns was not mentioned in this article, so I'm not sure if he is going to be part of any trade deadline deal. I did see Albert Breer, and they were talking about how he might not be, that he would see Carolina moving on from Brian Burns to be really, really difficult, meaning he doesn't see that. So that's going to, to me, it's going to come down to Danielle Hunter or Chase Young, but for the Minnesota Vikings, it's going to depend on whether or not they're 2-6, 3-5, or 4-4, and still with the heartbeat. The Washington Commanders, it's going to depend on if they are 3-5, 5-3, 4-4. But even if they're 4-4, they have to make a decision on what they're going to do with Chase and how far they think they could go. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget about the live stream watch party happening at Uno's Pizzeria on Sunday. We got about 35 tickets or so sold. If you still want to get your ticket, you can check the link in the description below. You guys are awesome. Take care of yourself and each other. And as always, go Lions. I don't make this stuff up. It's just things I want to see happen on our team because, as you heard before, Brad Holmes is always trying to get better.